So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this closing session. And I'm very honored to have the representatives from the various organizations that have been part of this conference, where they have contributed their ideas, their speakers, their staff, and definitely their support in one form or another in order to make this conference a success. Over the last 3 weekends and weekdays, the speakers have shown themselves to be an incredible source of information, inspiration, and also motivation. And I'm very grateful to all of them for having been part of this. And to thank my team who have worked tirelessly in the background and all the weekends and weeknights that they have been supporting this conference, which has been executed, I would say, flawlessly. So big thank you. And now I'm grateful to all of you being part of this closing session. And I know Eric is calling in from Rhode Island, and it is 4 a.m. in the morning for him, but he's looking ever so fresh. So I'm very touched by his dedication in waking up about probably 3:30 to get ready. So now to start off this session, I'd like to invite our representative from Ministry of Health, Dr. Mabel Yap, to offer her closing words and also where she sees mindfulness playing a part in the healthcare sector and also the population health of Singapore.
Thanks,
Mabel.
Angie. Yeah. Perhaps on behalf of all the panelists here, I just want to say congratulations for organizing this fabulous conference on connecting hearts and transforming minds. I think you and your team really did a great job, and we are privileged to be part of it. And I was really, really impressed with the lineup. I think more than 60 speakers locally and internationally. So in order of alphabetical order from Australia, Canada, China, UK, US. Really, really fantastic. And offering cutting edge research, practices, and approaches. I think the conference not only reached us as human beings, but you also have specific sessions for students, teachers, parents, healthcare professionals, caregivers, everyone. Yeah, so wherever we came from, we really had a great time learning and sparring with each other during these conferences. And I feel that this brings in a very important aspect of mental wellness from the individual level, building resilience, promoting wellness. And it plays a really, really important part. And I really look forward to having more of such initiatives. But having said that, I think promoting the individual level may not be enough. And that's where some of us have to step in. I see Hong Chun here. I'm really glad I'm not alone. Coming in from the ministry perspective, COVID has put a tremendous stress on the system. And during COVID, we formed a task force to address mental well-being. And the task force recognized that it is not enough just to look at mental wellness during pandemic. We need to have a national strategy, because I think it's not just internationally, but within Singapore, many tragic events have happened, not just due to pandemic alone. And recognizing that the task force that has been formed will bring in agencies, not just Ministry of Health, but Ministry of Social and Family Development, Ministry of Education, Manpower. So, and we have some 21 public, private, and people sector representatives in this task force to come up with a whole of country strategy to address mental well-being and wellness. So it's really, really exciting, and they just been formed while this conference started. So we are really looking forward to the recommendations. And I think together at the national level, institutional level, family level, school level, workplaces, with initiatives from Brown Center addressing the individual level, perhaps there's some hope for us to promote well-being and wellness in Singapore. So I'm really looking forward to working with you. Yeah. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mabel Yap, for those kind and encouraging words. And now I'd like to invite the Deputy Director, Deputy CEO of National Health Group, Professor Chua Hong Chun, to address us.
Thanks, Angie. Good afternoon, everyone, my fellow panelists, as well as all the participants in this final session. My name is Hong Chun. I'm from the National Healthcare Group. We're the National Healthcare Group. We are a public healthcare provider, and we have multiple institutions within the family. And my little talk is really following on from what Mabel just said, and how stressful it is. And I'm sure you can imagine healthcare has been these last 18 months dealing with COVID in our midst. Actually, even before COVID came along, we had recognized how important it is to manage the well-being of healthcare workers. I show you this picture because I think this is not a regular picture of what you think of when you see healthcare workers. You always see pictures of doctors and nurses and allied health in the wards with patients. This is us. No patient inside actually in this picture. It's just us caring for ourselves. I thought it's important to share it with you because whatever work you're coming from, whether you're coming from healthcare or from any other industry, before you can do your work for your clients, you must care for yourself. You can't care for others or provide services to others if you are not in a good state yourself. So I think this is something that I thought I'd share with all of you as a reminder to all of us who are healthcare workers, but for those who are not healthcare workers, to realize that people who provide services and who care for you also need care. And that's why really it's important that the National Healthcare Group were invited and were given this opportunity to participate in this conference. We have been actively working with Angie and Brahm Center to try to look for various solutions to support our colleagues at work. It's, as I mentioned, so important, and I think going forward, going to be a very key part of the work that we do in providing support to our colleagues at work. So I just wanted to really end by saying that, NHG, as a healthcare provider, continues to commit ourselves to providing excellent and quality care to our patients and the population we serve. But behind that, we are also committed to caring for our staff. Of course, mindfulness is one of the elements that we are putting together, but it's an important aspect. This is my only other picture, really. Besides helping our staff to achieve resilience and to help them to stay focused in the work that they do and to help them to reduce some of that stress, we have actually also been studying the impact of mindfulness and other resilience building techniques on our staff. And I'm not going to spend this time, but I think some of this work was presented at the conference, and I hope that there will be more studies to understand the impact of mindfulness as well as other techniques to improve resilience in all healthcare workers, and we can share this in future conferences. I'd just like to end by thanking Angie and Brahm Center really for giving the National Healthcare Group this opportunity to participate, to be a co-organizer and partner of this very important conference, really to contribute, but also and to share our experience, but also to learn from all the other speakers and sessions that we've had and the opportunity to attend. Thank you so much. A last thank you to Angie. You can see her here. She's not just a talking head here. You can see the rest of her here. She actually she turns up really and provides hands-on experience and support to the organizations she works with. A great big thank you to Angie and the team for putting together such an excellent program for all of us. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Professor Chua, for your very kind words, and your encouragement has always been such a motivation to us, and feeling the recognition to complement all of you out there in actually providing the healthcare services to the population. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite a very strategic partner that helped to make Asia Pacific Mindfulness Conference possible, and that is Brown University. We met a few years back when we were still able to travel, and I remember meeting Dr. Eric Locks on the street of Rhode Island as we were walking back from one building to another building in Brown University. And he has taken this amazing job to direct and manage the Brown Mindfulness Center. So I'd like to now invite Dr. Eric Locks to give us his presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just share my screen as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Good. Yeah, so it's a real pleasure to be here and to see this conference unfold. It's been some wonderful talks and really grateful to be part of it. And I just thought I'd share, what we're doing at Brown, and what I'm seeing is, how to build a foundation for both mindfulness research and education for the next 1,000 years. And in the research domain, these are some of the areas that I see that if we hit, that it'll really set a foundation for really some important discoveries. So one is around mindfulness delivery systems, whether it's digital delivery or in-person delivery, and can we leverage technologies like artificial intelligence or machine learning or social support, social dynamics, so that we can allow for scalable, really effective mindfulness programs to take place. Another thing is dose, so for my PhD, I was a pharmacologist, and we always look at dosing with drug studies, and there's been very little in the mindfulness field. So how can we find what the minimum effective dose is for mindfulness so that we're getting it just right for different people? The third thing is, how can we adapt mindfulness-based programs like MBSR really well to different cultures or racial groups, but also to different settings and different disease pathways. And by doing that, we might also be able to increase the effectiveness and reduce the burden on people. And that was what one of my talks earlier in this conference was about. Another opportunity for discoveries around mechanisms. We've been doing quite a bit of good work in that area, but really understanding the biology as well as the behavior and the psychological mechanisms will help us be able to target mindfulness programs to really engage with the most important mechanisms so that they become more effective and more efficient. I think some other areas for future research one is around cost effectiveness. So a lot of the research has been on effectiveness or efficacy, like how mindfulness programs influence health. But the cost is a really important thing for health insurers and governments. And the early research in mindfulness is actually quite promising around cost effectiveness, actually saving costs to the health insurers. But there's very few studies yet. And there's really a lot of opportunity in that regard. Safety is another piece, so that just like with any drug or surgical intervention or whatever it is, we always look at the positive effects as well as the negative effects and see if we can maximize the positive and minimize the negative, and to inform our consumers about what they're getting into. And so far with mindfulness-based programs like MBSR and MBCT, the research is showing quite good evidence of safety, but to do it even better in these areas, but also for other mindfulness programs too. I think diversity is a big piece, so that we're really making sure that we're inclusive by gender and by race, and also by socioeconomics class as well. So that's a big piece to see if mindfulness is working for everybody, and if not, who. And then the implementation science perspective. And I think just even seeing the panelists in this closing ceremony shows the dedication to that by Angie and by the organizers of this conference, so that can we work hand in hand with healthcare providers and with health insurers and patients and clinicians, so that we're developing programs that really meet the population needs and also meet the system that we're working within. And then just around, future directions for education, particularly training the next generation of scientists and teachers. At Brown, just this year, actually, we launched the first Masters in Public Health concentration of mindfulness, I believe, in the world. So a Masters in Public Health is a very practical degree that teaches people things like biostatistics and epidemiology and healthcare systems. But now at Brown, these graduate students can do a deep dig into training in mindfulness, on the impacts of it on physical and mental health, the mechanisms, looking at the research methods specific to mindfulness and the strengths and limitations of the field, so that when they graduate, they can go into the workforce, whether it's in industry or healthcare or medicine or public health, nonprofit organizations, with strong scientific skills that can be applied in many ways and a deep understanding of mindfulness itself. And then with our teacher training program for mindfulness-based stress reduction, we're trying to do it just as well as we can too, so that we have people, we encourage a good number of retreats so that people are developing their own personal practice if they're becoming a teacher. But then we also have very hands-on training of mindfulness, where they're actually in the classrooms, seeing how MBSR is being delivered, getting one-on-one mentoring, small group work, and then starting to really teach it themselves. So they're going out into the community and teaching it many times and learning from that. And then towards the end, they submit their videos of them doing MBSR teaching. And then we use this tool called the MBI TAC that's both quantitative and qualitative. It was developed in the UK to be able to look at teacher effectiveness. And then at that point, we provide a certification, and we've just been approved recently by Brown University to provide a university level certificate moving forward. So we're just starting to roll that out too. So that's our hope of how to integrate training into a university system so that it really stands the test of time. It's independent of, me or any individual once it's within the system. So we're really trying to do that both on the research side as well as the training side in mindfulness. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lukes, for sharing that. And it's really heartening to know the foundation that you're building to help with the world's mental health concerns. So big thank you to you.
Welcome. Thanks.
So Yenting represents the Agency for Integrated Care, who is a strategic partner in the care of mental health in the population. So the work and the strategy that they come up with is really important, as well as very supportive of what we need to do for the well-being of the community. So over to you, Yenting.
Thank you so much, Angie. Good afternoon, everyone. So allow me just to share my screen very quickly. Okay, I thought I wanted to title this short sharing about mindfulness and its impact on myself, our partners, and AIC as an organization. In fact, it's very heartening to see how the many participants have gathered over the last 3 weekends to learn more about mindfulness, its benefits, and how can we be adopting it in our personal lives and respective areas of work. So in fact, it is true, this session is a very good example of how personally I'm trying to put mindfulness into practice right now. As Angie has shared, it's really a last minute family crisis that I'm encountering right now that I'm supposed to be attending to, but practicing mindfulness so that I can focus on sharing at this very important plenary session. Personally, I've been through the mindfulness workshops and found myself becoming more self-aware, calmer, and able to cope with more difficult thoughts. And more importantly, I thought it's important to be kinder towards myself. And I must admit that's still really a learning journey. And there's so much to learn from the panelists, the speakers, as well as all the participants right here in this session. We are all familiar with the rising mental health needs in Singapore. And in fact, under the Community Mental Health Master Plan funded by Ministry of Health, AIC has been collaborating with community partners, hospitals, primary care providers to provide timely support and resources to those at risk or with mental health conditions and their families. We're very thankful for Brahm Center's support since 2016 to actually kickstart the community outreach teams and the community intervention teams. We are very supportive of the efforts by Brahm to spread the practice of mindfulness. And increasingly, we do see more of our community mental health service providers adopting mindfulness as part of their intervention and support for both their clients and caregivers, which we think that's very encouraging. Studies have shown that practicing mindfulness can help to manage depression, some anxiety problems, as well as feelings of stress. So I think it's very timely for us to be looking at how mindfulness can be inbuilt within the services that and the programs that we built. This slide just really see that about what are the upcoming trends as well as the emerging needs that we are observing. I think all of us who are practitioners on the ground or even policy administrators, we're hearing more and more about the needs that we encounter, be it through the youth, the working adults, especially during this COVID situation. And I think one big group that we're also recognizing require lots of support is really the caregiver group. Yeah, so I think there is lots that we can do to leverage on upcoming trends such as digitalization, how to better outreach to the youth and the working adults and the caregivers, and look at how we can expand the reach of mindfulness to reach out to these target groups. I think there's this great opportunity for us to go more upstream to look at how do we build resilience upfront. How do we actually normalize probably screening for needs, perhaps from that perspective from wellness instead of looking out for conditions? Is there an opportunity for us to look at incorporating mindfulness in the younger group as well? These are things that we think we can collectively work towards as a sector. I think if you look at it as an organization, we also we also see the shift of mindfulness from a more individual focus to the adoption of mindfulness as a leadership practice, as well as with benefits for both the leaders as well as the organizations in terms of health, productivity, and job satisfaction. In AIC, we have adopted mindfulness as part of our staff's foundation learning program since 2015, and Brown and NG is our key partner really in this journey as well. Titled AIC Mindfulness at the Workplace, the program aims to help participants or staff to improve both our physical health as well as mental performance, bring about greater attention, control, emotional regulation, and job performances. So as a whole, we aim to achieve workplace emotional well-being for our employees at AIC. To date, over 20 workshops have been conducted and close to 500 participants have actually benefited from it. I think one thing personally I see as an opportunity that we can enhance is to see how we can unite the smaller team structures to adoption of mindfulness as a common tool and approach. I think this is just a last slide. In fact, I hope that I should be feeling this way. Mindfulness really improves our mental well-being and mental health, and really there's no health without mental health. And I hope that we experience the joy and the calm as depicted in the picture here, despite the involvement and challenges and uncertainty that surround us. Once again, thank you, Angie, as well as Bram and the organizing community to inviting and involving AIC in this very important conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yanting, for your presentation and sharing of how mindfulness has been incorporated into the AIC DNA, as well as your support for mindfulness in the community. I personally benefited from your grant in being able to cross over from a commercial career into doing this full time. So thank you. And so now I'd like to invite Dr. Tanya Turney from the Lee Kong Chian School of Medicine, Nanyang Technological University. So you can see I'm not scripted here. So Tanya, it'd be lovely if you can share with us how LKC is incorporating mindfulness in equipping your medical professionals that be graduating with this mental resilience tool. So Tanya, please.
Thank you, Angie. And just firstly, thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this conference. And thank you to everyone, the whole team at Brown Centre. It's been an immense amount of work to make this possible. And I know it's taken many of their evenings and weekends, as well as all the work in the months previous. Yes, thanks to everyone. So, you've heard some of the other speakers highlight how important mindfulness is in healthcare, being a very demanding, challenging profession to work in with high rates of burnout. So one of the things that I'm aware of with our medical students is equipping them and preparing them to, for as they step into their career. And so some of the things we're doing, looking at many levels, firstly with some of the standalone interventions that we can roll out for them. So we're exploring mindfulness programs for them. Sometimes the full 8-week programs are too much to fit within a medical curriculum. So some of the shorter courses are very suitable for that. So for example, the the short course adaptation self-compassion for healthcare communities is one possibility we're exploring. But as well as the standalone interventions, I think that there's also an importance just to bring mindfulness and self-compassion and throughout really just the thread that runs through the medical school. So for instance, my main role in the medical school is teaching communication skills for our medical students. And what I found increasingly over the years that I've been exploring mindfulness and mindful self-compassion is just the language and the flavor that I bring and encourage the whole team of facilitators to bring to that teaching. Talking about, rather than active listening, talking about compassionate curiosity, and really encouraging the students to have that attitude of not only being mindfully present for the patient, but also being mindfully present for themselves throughout those interactions. We can have things, when we address particularly challenging topics such as end of life, then it feels appropriate then to have some formal mindfulness and self-compassion practices within teaching sessions. So multiple layers, I think, just filtering through the existing curriculum, but also thinking about how we can provide programs for mindfulness as well. So hopefully that will help our medical students as they graduate and step into the workforce, already going in with that attitude, and then that goes alongside everything that's happening in the healthcare clusters and in the Ministry for Health. And it takes many partners working at multiple levels to make this happen. So I'm really also grateful to the partners that I'm working with who are also in this call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanya, for that, sharing on how you're going to be incorporating mindfulness for the medical students and improving their communications, which is such an important aspect of the practice of medicine, isn't it? I mean, as a patient, I would love my doctor to be able to connect with me at a level that I feel cared about. So thank you for doing that. And now I'd like to invite Zan. Ms. Zan Fu is from SingHealth, the other large healthcare group in Singapore. She's the Deputy Director of the Institute for Patient Safety and Quality Care from the SingHealth Duke NUS Academic Medical Center. Zan, please.
Thank you, Angie. Can I share screen?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zan from the SingHealth Duke NUS Institute for Patient Safety and Quality, and I'm very happy to be able to share our Thrive journey in how IPSQ support SingHealth in enhancing self-care, team care, as well as joy at work. So in terms of strengthening the safety culture, we have actually co-created 6 strategies with our partners, internal partners, and building resilience and preventing burnout is definitely one key focus area of our work. And in 2019, in order to understand the prevalence of burnout of various group of healthcare professionals within SingHealth, as well as to understand what matters to staff, we conducted a survey from July 2019 to January 2020, way before COVID. And we found out that these are the top 5 joy at work areas that matters to our staff. So top on the list is choice and autonomy, where staff feels that they need to play a critical role in making decisions in how they execute their daily work processes and tasks. And then we have physical and psychological safety, wellness, teamwork, as well as participative leadership, where employees feel the need to see leaders as partners in the co-creation of solutions. So with this, we went on to look at how we could improve joy at work, and we adapted from the IHI Joy at Work framework, and also the use of QI frameworks and tools to help us, to guide us in piloting and testing approaches in some of the interventions that we have in plan. And here are a list of our Thrive programs that we have mapped out. These are actually programs that we have co-designed with internal partners like our clinical psychologists, art therapists, as well as some patient safety leaders. So it's actually very organic. We run a couple of pilot runs, then there are many reiterations of the program before full rollout within SingHealth Cluster. And when we first started, we introduced the iThrive Mindful Hour program. So this started in October 2019 when we were still able to gather together and practice mindfulness. So it was held weekly and it provided opportunities from staff from across SingHealth institutions to come together to practice mindfulness and to share and discuss how to apply these practices back at home and also back at their own departments. So in January 2020, we actually introduced a new program called Appreciate, whereby our app therapists guided staff who are keen to practice mindfulness through curated art pieces. So this was also organized on a weekly basis, and we took the art pieces from the Care Collection, that is by the National Gallery as well as Singapore Art Museum. It has attracted about 100 or over participants, and because of COVID, we have brought this up online, and we will be thinking of how to actually sustain this and scale this further. So in fact, together with our faculty members, I'm not sure whether they're online, but we truly would like to thank them to support us in our iThrive Mindful Hour journey. And together with them, we'll be looking at how to spread and sustain this initiative. So moving forward, we'll be calling for mindfulness practitioners from within SingHealth and UNUS to join our current pool of faculty. And we will work towards developing resources such as video podcasts, instructional videos, as well as facilitator guide to help facilitate small group mindfulness sessions back at their individual teams and institutions. So for individual staff, we are also tapping on an internal grant to look at how we can expand mindful self-care resources online through our iThrive online portal. And if it proves useful, we might even introduce the app to inpatient patients as well as SOC patients. So getting a group of advocates, patient advocates, to see whether they can spread this to our patients as well. In our journey in enhancing team care, we started this, I think, in 2019, July, when we invited Duke Patient Safety Center to conduct a 2-day workshop in Singapore for 80 of our patient safety leaders, where they get to learn resilient tools to cultivate joy, mindfulness, as well as gratitude. And in 2020, we started to work on content development to see whether we can contextualize the content and develop a half-day program. We named it as Team Thrive. So basically it focused on building team resilience as well as positive psychological tools to introduce them what are 3 good things, gratitude, and 1 good chat. So we started pilot runs, and then recently, the success of the pilot run, we rolled it out to the cluster in July, and we have a team of 10 faculty supporting us in this journey. So moving beyond, I guess it's always good to share training content and training guide with institutions as well as interested parties who wish to bring back the workshop to their own institution as well as departments. So we will be seeing how we can introduce this to SingHealth residency program and how we can get our residency faculty to even, train the students in positive psychological tools as well as team resilience. So if you see, these are our internal Team Thrive faculty from SGH, CGH, and some of our national institutions who are supporting us in this journey in terms of teaching the program. And I guess the future of self-care and team care as well as joy at work is really about substantial collaboration with internal as well as external partners in order to co-create and co-design improvement and programs that are appropriate and sustainable. So with this, I guess I would also like to thank NG and team to bring APAC Mindfulness Conference to us here, and hopefully next year we will be having this conference sometime around June. There'll be more collaboration and more speakers to share mindfulness journey. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zan, for sharing what you're doing in Sing Health and how you're even incorporating mindfulness with art. And we were actually hoping to conduct that workshop on site, but with all the going ons and the uncertainty, we decided to delay that. I know Dr. Mabel Yap was going to be one of the leaders in that workshop. So we will be organizing it. So everybody stay tuned for that. Okay, and now I'd like to invite Dr. Jeffrey Tan from Institute of Mental Health. IMH is at the forefront of looking after mental health of the population, and it'll be lovely to hear from him what you have in mind in IMH in terms of promoting mindfulness to your patients within IMH and also for everyone to be more well-versed in becoming mentally well.
Thank you, Angie. So I thought I might share a little bit about mindfulness journey at IMH. I think we've been delivering mindfulness in the form of individual therapy for many, many years now. And over the last few years, there have been a couple of our members who have started to offer mindfulness groups. So there's been a MBCT group for staff that was started by Shanghui and Jermaine. Jamie had started delivering MBCT for patients with depression. And we also have had a DBT group that's been run by a group of our psychologists, by Michelle and Mavis. And then a couple of years back, Prof. Chua actually suggested to us that we should start a mindfulness work group to coordinate our mindfulness activities. So we started organizing ourselves in the form of this mindfulness work group where we kind of updated one another on how these individual services have been going and also how to kind of deliver more mindfulness for our staff. And so we've continued to have people who've especially from the psychology department, who've done things like forest bathing, developed ACT groups, both for psychosis and other diagnoses. The case management unit has been really active. They got some training with Angie. And then we've started to offer mindfulness groups for our staff and doing more informal mindfulness like mindful eating. And the HR department has kind of worked with MindFight to offer the MindFight app to our staff from a wellness perspective. And then COVID hit. And because many of our groups are face-to-face, some of them have had to pause, some of them had shifted to Zoom delivery. But it's challenging because with Zoom, things like risk management change. And it's something that we have to take into account and consider. So there have been challenges with that. We started offering Zoom-based mindfulness for staff over Circuit Breaker. And that's been kind of on and off, but also more recently, that's been a bit of a challenge as well. Moving forward, we really hope to restart some of these activities in a bigger way, and other three key areas that we feel we would kind of like to focus on within IMH and beyond IMH. The first is to develop for our patients, to develop our capacity in delivering mindfulness-based treatments for mental health conditions. The second is kind of for our staff to build a community of practice within IMH. And the third is kind of to extend and build our bridges with the larger mindfulness ecosystem in Singapore and beyond. So for our patients, I guess over the course of the conference, I've been listening to some of the talks on like trauma-sensitive mindfulness, MBCT, where we think about how we might deliver and use mindfulness when we're trying to use it with a particular group of patients, and the kind of challenges that come with that. And so I feel that there's this real need for us to develop and share our expertise on working with individual groups of patients or individual difficulties, like how we work with trauma, how to, especially within the therapists, there's a group of therapists who really feel uncomfortable, for example, using mindfulness for patients who have a lot of distress. And so sharing our experience in how we might use that and how we might develop that would be really helpful. to develop competency and teacher training for our staff, so we have more expertise in the evidence-based mindfulness treatments, and working out the evidence of how to overcome some of these barriers, whether it's psychological, biological, or cultural, in the delivery of mindfulness, and how to kind of develop the local evidence and research for this. For me personally, I'm especially interested actually in how we can adapt mindfulness in order to train families of our patients together with the patients in kind of the units of support for our patients or clients, so that, you know, not only does our client learn mindfulness, but also, you know, people around them can learn to develop mindfulness to support their mental health conditions. For staff, you know, my focus is kind of on how do we develop a community where we kind of are able to practice and learn mindfulness together, where there's interest and where we can spark interest in our practice. And I really want to echo what Tanya said earlier about noticing the flavor we bring to our communication. In therapy, we talk about the therapist as an instrument, and how the person of the therapist really determines how therapeutic that therapist can be. And so I think this is even more the case in mindfulness, where we really want to have a personal practice to bring authenticity to what you teach, what you deliver, to your presence when you're with a client. And I've seen this in my own life. I have a young child, a son, and I've had these ups and downs with my personal practice, and as a parent. And so I've kind of learned with him, for example, how to become more playful in my mindfulness, how to become more child-centered, how to practice together. And I really feel that this is something that we could bring to our IMH staff. So I've been especially inspired by some of the talks over the conference on things like nutrition, the workplace, relationships. And I feel like it would be really great if we can integrate that into our staff wellness programs, give talks on mindfulness, to develop a community that can practice together more regularly, and also kind of develop those informal competencies and experiences, those micro skills that people have talked about, that, you know, people can use at any time, not just in the context of like an evidence-based program. And then the third way I think would be great is I've been really inspired by how much expertise there really is out there in Singapore, internationally at Brahm Center. And I really would love to find more ways to work together, to maybe offer workshops together, to have discussions, maybe to practice mindfulness together, to share experience, and to work together to really see how we can improve mental health in Singapore. And also, especially for those people who suffer from mental health conditions in the IMH population, and to work with kind of researchers to see how we can improve these therapies, and especially for the local context. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tan. And I would like to also say that that's why we're going to kick off nightly meditation sessions, free for all our mindfulness graduates, starting in September at 10 o'clock at night. And why 10 o'clock? Because people who can't sleep are the ones who really need to attend this. And for the benefit of Dr. Lux, Professor Chua was the former CEO of Institute of Mental Health before he was moved to another hospital. So he actually started a lot of the mindfulness initiatives and built the foundation there. And welcome, Professor Kuken from the Oxford Mindfulness Center at Oxford University. I know this must have disrupted your morning program, and thank you so much for making the effort to join us this morning. So we're just going to get Julian to speak now, and then it'll be over to you as the closing speaker. So Julian is from the Yong-Loo Lin School of Medicine and US, and who has been working very closely with us on research on the impact of mindfulness based on the courses that we've been conducting, including MBSR, but also the Mindfulness Foundation course, which is a 4-session, and the collaboration we have on MBTI, which is Mindfulness-Based Therapy for Insomnia. So Julian, thank you very much for your support all these years, and I'd like to invite you now to share what you have in mind with your research.
Yes, thank you. So as Angie just said, we have been working together for quite a number of years, and I've actually had the pleasure of being on the organizing committee of this conference right from the start. And it's just amazing how much it's grown over the years from that one-day meeting to what it is now. And to have just the stupendous roster of speakers that we've managed to get together this year is just really, really inspiring. And thank you and everybody else who helped out for doing such a fantastic job of putting this program together. So one of my own big areas of research, of course, is sleep. I work out of the Center for Sleep and Cognition in the NUS School of Medicine. And we believe that sleep is really an integral part of well-being. And because of that, one of our missions, I think, is to really get out into the community and get people to reevaluate and reprioritize the value of sleep. So our own lab, we've had the good fortune of doing a big study recently, looking at mindfulness-based therapy for insomnia and showing that using these mindfulness techniques actually is quite beneficial for many people for improving their sleep quality. Some of you may have gone to Dr. Parini's talk just now, where she shared some of those results. And I'm happy to share that the course is now available through the Brahm Center and through other channels as well. And I hope that a lot of people out there will be able to get the chance to experience this and really see this as a new option for dealing with their sleep difficulties if they are experiencing that. And quite apart from that, there are many other ways in which we're trying to improve sleep so as to improve well-being out in the community. So we have a lot of initiatives, as I said, trying to bring sleep education to large groups of people to get them to see the importance of that and to reprioritize sleep in their lives, as well as practical changes. So for example, trying to get schools to start later so that children and adolescents have an opportunity to get the sleep that they need as well, which is so important for their development and for their mental health. So my day job is as a researcher, and it's been really special to me to hear all of the wonderful talks by many of really the leading scientific lights in our field this conference, and hear about some of the new work they've been doing. And in my own talk, I had the chance to tell you about how I think that we could be doing or how we should be doing more impactful science in the future. We are still a relatively small band of scientists, and I think it's through meetings like these that we really get a chance to come together and interact with each other and build the collaborations that we need to go out in bigger groups and do more meaningful and impactful science together in the future. So I think that Dr. Lux just now has sort of built up a very good agenda for some of the things that we need to be concentrating on and some of the things we need to be learning. And I feel that those projects, some of them are much bigger than what a single lab or even a single center can do. And I think that the more that we can come together as teams, as groups, even across countries, across borders, the better chance we have of doing really meaningful science in the future. And along those lines, I think a lot of the most successful groups in science have been those who have worked together with other organizations, with practitioners. And as Angie said, we've had a chance to work together on many projects over the last few years, and it's been I've been very, very grateful for that. We have managed to come up with several joint publications now, together with the Brahm Center on the research projects that we've done. And I think that the work that we have done over the last few years certainly would not have been possible without their help and cooperation. So I thank you very much for that. And I guess the final thing I want to say is to all of the members of the public and people who have participated in these conferences, that your support and your interest is really very vital as well, because I feel that the more visible we are as a whole, the more people have to sit up and take notice. And these people include funding agencies, stakeholders, government. And I think it's through this collective effort that they really can feel the importance of wellness and the part that mindfulness plays in improving wellness and well-being. So I thank everybody who took part in these sessions for helping to grow this endeavor as well and make us more visible as a community. So all in all, I guess I should close by saying that I'm really excited about the future of mindfulness research and the future of mindfulness in Singapore, and to thank everyone for your continued support.
Thank you, Dr. Julian Lim. You have helped us make mindfulness credible with your research and publishing your papers. So we're very grateful to you too. And last but not least, we are very honored and privileged to have Oxford Mindful Center to be part of this conference. They have contributed a large number of very high esteemed speakers as well, together with Brown University. And we're very privileged to have Professor William Kukin addressing us as this part of this closing. And thank you, William, for your support.
Thank you, Angie, very much, and a pleasure to be alongside you all as part of this panel, and with all of the people as a closing part of this conference, which I think is a real testament to the Brahm Center and all of its partners, that you have pulled together such a high quality conference on such timely, topical and important topics, and really the size of the audience that you've reached, I think, is a testament to what potential we have, I think, to make a difference in the Asian Pacific area. I feel very strongly that we are at a really interesting point in the arc of human history, and particularly in Asia, that there has been so much industrial development, development in every frontier of sort of the human ecosystem. But the thing that has been really neglected, I think, has been something about human potential, human well-being, human mental health, and human potential, human flourishing. And I think my hope, I suppose, is that the next 50 years will see us really begin to take close attention to that, and really to prioritize that in the same way that other things have been prioritized in the last 50 years. I think in a way, the COVID-19 pandemic has had so many negative effects on the world. But one of the potentially positive effects it may have had is a sort of an awakening of people's sensibility, of people's sense of compass of what's important and what needs to be prioritized. And it's very interesting that we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic, but of course we had a whole range of pandemics prior to this pandemic in the realm of mental health and well-being. You know, to have the number of young people reporting significant anxiety and depression and self-injury. I mean, these are really quite significant rates. You know, 15 to 20% of young people are reporting problems in these areas. The world's population is running at about 7 billion. 1 billion of those are going to have diagnosable mental health problems at some point in their life. I mean, that's a pandemic, right? And what is so very interesting, I think, about that is that we actually, as we've heard from the other panelists and during this conference, is we know a lot about how to work with pain, with sleep, with depression, with worry. We also know quite a lot about how to promote mental health and well-being. So 50 years ago, we didn't know that much about heart disease and cardiovascular health and the influence of diet and the influence of exercise and the influence of all sorts of things that affect heart health. But we do now, and that is in the mainstream. And I think our collective challenge, it seems to me, is to bring all of those understandings and those practices, both from the contemplative traditions and from mainstream psychology and from public health, into the mainstream in the same way people working in cardiovascular health have done in the last 50 years. And I think if we do that, we will see a generation of people 50 years from now emerging into a world with a much more mature understanding of mental health, of sleep, of the perniciousness of worry and rumination, and they will have strategies other than self-injury to regulate their emotions. Where do we as a mindfulness community come into that? I think for me, there's two parts of that. There's a what and there's a how. And I actually think they're both really equally important. And I think in a way, the how is, interestingly, to my mind anyway, more radical. The what is, we have theories, to use kind of that language, or maps, to use more secular language, of the human mind and how the human mind creates, by mind I mean mind and body, creates some of these problems: depression, chronic pain, worry, the sort of vicious cycles that Eric's program of work suggests drives both stress and cardiovascular health, that interaction of physical and mental health. We have those theories, we have those maps, and we have practices and programs that show tremendous promise. That's the what, but we have obviously a lot more research to do. The how, I think, is really interesting. And I think one of the things I have felt about working in a range of different areas in my academic career is that there is a something slightly different about the centers. And I think this conference organized by the Brahm Center is an exemplar of that. There is something about, well, I think the pandemic has demonstrated that if major world problems are going to be addressed, they're going to require collaboration. They're going to require people putting their ego to one side and putting the issue in the foreground. And they're going to have to require business, industry, academics, charities, all working together. So in a way, an example would be Oxford University and AstraZeneca working in partnership to create a vaccine that is now being distributed widely around the world. Now, can we do the same thing in the mindfulness world? I think we already do. There is in my experience, a spirit of collaboration, of co-working, of generosity that I think is something really important about the how of this work. So I just say a few words about our work at the Oxford Mindfulness Center. We have spent the last 20 years or so working on recurrent depression and doing an arc of work around trying to formulate what drives psychologically recurrent depression, developing a program, running randomized controlled trials to suggest that that program, MBCT for recurrent depression, is helpful for people who are at risk for depression and potentially an alternative to antidepressants. And then in partnership with many of the people on this call, working on a program of implementation, setting standards for training, setting up training centers, and making sure people around the world have got the skills, the competencies, and the confidence to teach these programs. And I think it's now in the clinical guidelines of at least a dozen countries around the world that MBCT should be a treatment option for people with recurrent depression. What's next for us is to move into the space of sort of more public health. And I think one of the things that I find most interesting about the field of mindfulness is that the three apps, and I'm not sure if this is equally true in Asia, but the three apps that Calm, Headspace, and Insight Timer have introduced more than 400 million people to mindfulness. I'll say that again, 400 million people. Now that's a lot of people. And I'm not so sure on these stats, because it's obviously commercially sensitive. But my understanding is that within 3 months, most people stop using those apps, having started to use them. So that's from a behavioral change point of view and from the work that we do really interesting, right? How can we think about introducing people to mindfulness and keeping them engaged with mindfulness in a way that is helpful to their mental health, to their well-being, and whatever concerns that they're bringing, be that sleep, be that pain, be that depression, be that cardiovascular health. And I think that's the challenge for us in this field in the next 50 years. And the way I think of it is a sort of a funnel. Can we think about the opening of the funnel where those 400 million people come in, and can we introduce them to mindfulness in a way that is tractable, accessible, potent, and avoids some of the pitfalls? So there's that. And then how do you take people to the next stage? And for those who want to go deeper and into a deeper period of inquiry, how do you do that? So we've developed a series of curricula that we are evaluating with research to do that. I just want to finish because I think in these mindfulness communities, we can sometimes be a little bit, and I'm sorry if this is challenging, a little bit self-congratulatory. A lot of people I know outside the mindfulness bubble, when I use the word mindfulness, I can just see their eyes. You know, the screens come down. So I've done a little bit of market research, and people go, oh, it's just not very masculine, or it's all a bit touchy-feely, or it's a bit selfish, or, oh, that's so yesterday, or whatever it might be. And I think we need to really, really listen carefully to those critiques, and we need to think about how we can communicate skillfully. I think of mindfulness as being a bit like a diamond with many different facets. How can we communicate skillfully those facets without using the words, the language, the ideas that make those shutters come down, that make those screens? So if I say to people, I'm going to teach, like in a school or wherever, or in a prison, I'm going to teach mindfulness. My experience has become more and more, it's much more skillful to say, depending on the setting, we're going to be talking about attention and focus, or we're going to be talking about the ability to regulate yourself at times of stress. So we're taking each of the facets of the diamond and introducing those rather than the word mindfulness. So I think that's one of the risks in the whole mindfulness field. And given that these are practices and traditions that are thousands of years old, I have every confidence that we can do that. And I think the final thing I would say, which I think every other panelist, as I understand it, has also said, is I think we need to not only do really good science, which means asking the important questions, doing the work as well as we can, but then also to report the science responsibly, clearly and responsibly. And there will be times, I know there are already been many times, but there will be times where the science will not give us the answers that we expected, or perhaps even wanted. And we're about to publish a paper suggesting that there is a subgroup of people for whom antidepressants are probably a much better bet than MBCT. Great. Let those folks not have to worry about doing 40 minutes, an hour of practice a day and go the easier route. But there's actually a larger group of people for whom the MBCT adds a lot of value. Let's start personalizing what we're doing. But the point I'm trying to make is the science can help us answer those questions. We then need to be open to whatever we find and then responsibly report and implement what we find. And I personally feel incredibly excited about what the next 50 years is going to hold in terms of what we're going to learn and what we're going to do. But it's going to, I think, require a collective effort on all of our parts to do that work and to do that work to the best of our ability. So I think that's all I wanted to say, and just to thank the Brahm Center and Angie in particular for having put on such an extraordinarily impactful, thoughtful, and wide-ranging conference that's addressed so many of the kind of timely and important issues that the world faces at the moment. So thank you.
Thank you very much, William, for those very kind words and inspiring us on this path of promoting and teaching mindfulness. I'm very heartened by the support that I have from you and Brown University, and especially my colleagues here in the community. As you can see, it's represented by the two very large hospital groups here, the healthcare groups, the universities, and Ministry of Health. So we are definitely heading in the right direction, and I think that this is really a collective initiative. I'm very delighted to share that the government's Public Service Division had commissioned us to offer mindfulness on Mondays for 4 sessions, and now they've extended it to as well. So there is definitely a recognition and acceptance at a very wide area. So let's continue on and push ahead, as mental health is so important, and mental health is also being threatened by the pandemic and so many other issues that most of us are not really prepared for. So being in the moment is such a powerful antidote. So I'm very hopeful that we will come together for the Asia Pacific Mindfulness Conference 2022. And anyone out there who would like to play a part in it and also to help sponsor Mindfulness Conference 2022, we'll be very grateful. And once again, I am really, really touched by this collaboration, and let's do more of it together so that the world, not just Singapore, I mean, I think we've done quite a lot. We've reached out to more than 70,000 people now, but as a region, as the world, what can we do together so that more people understand and will adopt the practice of mindfulness because of just the amazing benefits that it brings.